May 19th, 1892. Dear Martha, yesterday the soldier came back and brought a clerk from the yellow fever quarantine office. Mrs. Plum introduced him. Clerk said, "You're looking for Mr. and Mrs. Bodain from the wagon train?" I was so scared, I just nodded. I noticed Mrs. Plum came and stood out by my side. Clerk said, "Sorry to tell you, but Mr. and Mrs. Bodain from the wagon train expired 2 days ago." He shuffled through his papers and checked his watch. Expired? Miss Plum said, "Teddy, I'm sorry, but your parents passed away." I stared at her. Clerk said, "Passed away means died." He sounded impatient. I don't know why, but it was like a string of firecrackers went off in me all at once. I screamed, "I know what passed away means. Do you think I'm dumb just because I'm a kid? You can't keep records worth beans. You don't even know where all the wagon train people are. My baby brother passed away. He was just 2 years old. You didn't know him? We had to bury him on the spring bank. I know what passed away means." The clerk and the soldier backed away. I was still yelling for Mama and Pap when Mrs. Plum handed me a cup of water. She said, "Drink this, honey. This'll help you feel better." I said, "My Mama and Pap are dead?" She said, "I'm so sorry." I thought about Mama and Pap. I needed them. How could they be dead? Mrs. Plum must have put sleepy drops in my water because I was soon floating. I was dreaming, but it was as if I was awake at the same time. I dreamed of flying kites with Minnie and Travis and Jasper. I saw Travis cut my line. I watched the Florida Belle float up into the sky. We laughed and laughed and laughed. I called to Travis, "Minnie and I will pay you back. Just you wait and see." He laughed like only Travis can laugh. I felt the sun shining on my face. I saw us jumping off the rope swing right over the deepest part of the spring and dog paddling to the side of the swimming hole to climb out and do it all over again. I felt the splash of the cool water. I saw the fiddlers and the banjo players playing to the beat, the band as folks danced and sang at the whoop-de-doo. Saw Miss Melman waltzing with Captain Walsh. I saw the Carters and the Larks. I saw folks from the other wagon train. Who did we meet? The Bodains? The Bodains? The Bodains? I woke with a start. It was early morning. Birds were chirping in the trees. I sat up on my pallet. Something caught my eye. Something red. A red bird. A cardinal. It flitted from the oak tree to a bush near my pallet. He looked at me, cocking his head to one side and then the other, opened his throat and sang a joyful little jingle. A few seconds later, his soft brown mate joined him on another branch. She looked at me with bright eyes, as if she was trying to tell me something. I knew it right then. The Bodains the soldier talked about are not Mama and Pap. They're the Bodains we met when our 2 wagon trains joined up. It has to be. Mama and Pap are alive. I just know it. Love, Teddy. May 20th, 1892. Dear Martha, all day today I thought about Mama and Pap. Where are they? Maybe they think I'm dead. Maybe they're sick themselves. Maybe they're with the wagon. Why aren't they looking for me? When I woke up from a nap late this afternoon, the girl in the next row came over. She said, "They came while you were asleep. I heard them saying something about an orphanage." I said, "I'm not an orphan. My parents are alive." She looked puzzled. "Didn't they tell you your parents are dead?" I said, "Yes, but that's because they don't know about the other Bodains. We met some people not too long ago. They were named Bodain too, and they were traveling with a wagon train." She said, "Some other Bodains?" I said, "And I saw a redbird, a cardinal, and his mate. They came to my pallet and sang for me. That's Mama's favorite bird. I think Mama and Pap are alive." She made a face. "You saw a redbird and now you think your Mama is alive." I said, "I know it sounds crazy." I looked at her. "You think it sounds crazy?" She said, "Yes, it sounds crazy." She smiled. "But yes, they might be alive. There's a chance. But if you want to go while the getting's good, if you don't want to end up at an orphanage, you better get out of here soon. They come and take children away when they haven't got any folks. Great buckets of butter beans." She said, "Hold on," and was gone for a few minutes. When she came back, she handed me a little bundle tied with a bandana. I said, "What's this?" She said, "I scrounged a few things from here and there. Some of these folks aren't going to make it, and where they're going, they won't need it. This should do you for today." I said, "Thanks." She said, "Mrs. Plum and her helpers are getting ready to serve supper. This would be a good time to hit the road and not be seen. Go on. If anyone asks, I'll cover for you. Felt strange to just walk away from the quarantine area and the lady who'd helped me. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and a single bundle wrapped in a bandana. Where would I go? Where would I sleep? How would I find my parents? I felt helpless and more alone than ever in my life. I trembled from head to toe. Then Miss Melman's word came to me. I know you, Teddy Bodain, and you will find a way. You will find a way. You will find a way. The sun was setting. I walked quickly out from under the trees across the field to the lane in front of the big house. I walked and walked, following the road, led to the edge of town, and I began to see more houses. One of them had a hammock in the backyard. The light was fading, so I didn't think anyone saw me. Here in the hammock, I opened the bandana. There's an apple, ham sandwich, and a hard-boiled egg. I'm so hungry, I could eat a buttered skunk. Thought about the girl who gave it to me. She helped me, and I didn't even know her name. Love, Teddy. May 21st, 1892. Dear Martha, today I found out by listening to other people's conversations that there is another quarantine station 2 miles out on the other side of town. Mama and Pap might be there. As I walked through town, my stomach was growling. I ate all my food last night. I should have saved something for breakfast. I walked past houses and I smelled coffee and fried bacon. I passed a fruit stand. There were oranges, sweet, juicy oranges. I passed a bakery and the smell almost knocked me out of my shoes. The window was filled with rolls and loaves of breads and buns. I didn't have any money, but I was so hungry I stopped in. I asked the baker, "Sir, do you have any deliveries I can make?" "You wouldn't have to pay me any money. All I need is a slice of bread." He said, "Sorry, we have a delivery boy." My shoulders sagged. I said, "Thank you anyway. I'm going to the other side of town, so I thought I'd just ask." As I was leaving, he called. Well, it might be a good impression on Mrs. Jenkins if I got her bread to her a little early. The delivery boy was late yesterday. He handed me 2 loaves wrapped in white paper and tied with a string. He said, "And this is for you." He folded down the top of the paper sack and handed it to me. I said thank you and started to leave. He said, "Mrs. Jenkins is the last house on this road before you leave town. Big white house with green shutters." He looked at me over his glasses. "I hope I'm making a good decision to trust you. You won't eat Mrs. Jenkins' bread, will you?" I said, "No, sir, I'm trustworthy." When I got to Mrs. Jenkins' house, she tipped me for delivering the bread. I didn't want to take it, but she said nonsense. I tipped Jack Taylor, and he's always late. She gave me 2 cents. I tied them in my bandana. 2 cents will buy me some food. 2 cents. All I have to my name. I had to walk slow because I'm weak from having yellow fever, but all the walking I've done these past few weeks on the trip strengthened my legs. I got to quarantine camp and went to see the clerk. I said, "I'm looking for my parents, Dalton Luke Bodain and Grace Alice Bodain." He checked his list, just like the other clerk had done, and said, "Nope, sorry, no Bodains. We have a Bordeaux and 2 Bordens, but no Bodains." I asked him if I could look for folks from Wagon Train to see if they had any news about Mama and Pap. I told him I had already had the fever and was over it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let me in. He said, "You may look for 15 minutes. They're fever victims and they need their rest." I looked up and down the road. I spotted Mr. Lowe, Jasper's father. He was very weak, very sick. "I think they took your pap over to quarantine 1, he said. "I don't know about your mama." I said, "Where's everyone else from our train? Captain, Miss Melman." He said, "Don't know. Been sick for a week." I said, "Where's our wagon train?" He said, 3 miles east of here. "But if there's no one living in your wagon, it's likely to have been impounded. I heard talk of it today." "Yep, you better head east if you want the train." "The sun rises in the east and sets in the west," Mama said. I started walking east. As I walked, I opened the bag the baker gave me, hungry for a slice of bread. But instead of bread slice, there were 3 jelly donuts. I've never had a jelly donut before, but if I live long enough, I'm going to eat 10,000 more. When I got to our camp, most of the wagons were gone. What can happen next? Love, Teddy. May 22nd, 1892. Dear Martha, I slept under the stars last night. There were still soldiers about, but no one noticed me. I spent the morning looking around and realized what a mess I'm in. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I have no place to go. My parents aren't here. Most of the wagons are gone, and the few that aren't have no people in them. Everyone has just disappeared. There's no sign of Girlie or Jeb, January, or Ethelbert. When I thought about Ethelbert, my heart sank. He found me, and now I've lost him. Where in the world is he? Does he have any food or water? I asked one of the soldiers, "Where is everyone?" He said the wagon train headed on. The folks who were, felt they needed to get out of harm's way with this epidemic. Can't blame them. I said, "But where's our wagon? My mama and pap had yellow fever." And he said, "So there were fever victims, huh? Then your wagon's most likely impounded down at the quarantine stockade. We moved wagons all day yesterday. We have a few more to move today. They're empty. Folks are either dead or too sick to protect their own stuff. The U.S. government has to do it for them." He snapped the suspenders on his uniform. I said, "Where did you move our wagon? It isn't here." He said, "It must be at the quarantine stockade about 4 miles that way." He pointed, "But they're not going to let you in there. The court has to decide whose those things go to. Death certificates have to be verified, next of kin have to be notified, and so forth." I said, "My parents are not dead." He said, "Then they'll be able to claim their things, but they aren't about to let a young girl near those wagons. They're government property until a proper claim has been filed. I'm sorry, but it's just the way it is. It's out of my hands." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. He must have seen how upset I was, because he said, "I'll tell you what I can do. I can feed you before I send you on your way." That was the best news I'd heard all morning. The cook at the chow wagon was not happy about it, but the soldiers stayed with me to make sure I got plenty. I went through the chow line and piled sliced beef, green beans, coleslaw, corn on the cob, big chicken leg, 2 rolls on a plate. I tore into that food like my life depended on it. The soldier said, "Are you sure you're not an orphan?" I said, "I'm sure." He laughed and said, "Then you eat like a boy." I put the 2 rolls of chicken leg in my pockets, thanked him, and headed on my way. He called, "I'm sorry about your wagon. If it's impounded, there's nothing I can do about it." I walked the 4 miles to the quarantine stockade. It's surrounded by soldiers guarding people's belongings. There are many wagons in the stockade. Some are covered wagons like ours, and others are just plain wagons. They're lined up in several rows. Unfortunately, most covered wagons look a lot alike. But if I can sneak in there, I could find our wagon because of Mama's artwork. If the soldiers spot me, they might arrest me since I'm not supposed to be there. So I'm staying out of sight. I found a little clump of bushes near an oak tree where I can rest and not be seen. Late this afternoon, I ate the chicken leg and the 2 rolls. When it's dark, I'm going to find our wagon and get what I can. Love, Teddy. May 23rd, 1892. Dear Martha, tonight was one of the scariest nights of my life. The soldiers in the stockade built campfires and ate supper. I watched them through the bushes. There were 8 or 10 of them, and after they ate, they started a card game. While they were busy, I snuck around to the side. One soldier walked back and forth guarding the wagons. When he walked the other way, I slipped in beside the rows of wagons. I walked as quietly as I could, trying to find our wagon. Each time the guard turned and walked back, I hid. I made my way wagon to wagon, looking for Mama's artwork. At last, I saw it. The last wagon in the last row. The soldiers were having an argument. One soldier said, "Pistachios are nuts, I'm telling you." Another soldier said, "And I'm telling you there's no such thing. I think you're nuts." While they were arguing, I ran forward and hid by our wagon. There was Mama's artwork. Mama. The thought of her made my heart ache. Climbed onto the frame and slipped inside. It was dark. Dark. I felt my way to the candle stubs I used to keep for writing. I felt a book of matches, found my copy of Little Women, and stood it on end. I lit the candle behind the book so the flame was barely visible. The first thing I saw, when my eyes adjusted, was a fancy envelope with my name on it. It was a note from Miss Melman. My hands were shaking as I tore it open. Dear Theodosia, I'm hoping you are alive. Your father was taken away sick. I'm sorry, I don't know where. The soldiers were going to impound Gurley and Gabriel, so I took them with me. You can have them back when you get settled. Captain Walsh took Jeb in January for safekeeping for your father. I'm sorry, but I couldn't find Ethelbert anywhere. I'm going on with the wagon train to St. Augustine, to the Sheridan School. Please come see me. Remember, no matter what you face, you are Teddy Bodain, and you will find a way. Love, Miss Melman. I don't know how long I sat there, but my cheeks were wet with tears. I heard the soldiers talking and realized I had to hurry. I gathered a few things to take with me, change of clothes, my colored pencils, my sketchbook, my slingshot, and some jerky. Oh, and some fishing line and hooks. I bundled my belongings in the bandana. What I really needed was under the wagon in the secret compartment. I was headed for the door when I stepped on one of Dylan's toys. It made a loud noise. I froze, hoping the soldiers weren't paying attention. I heard someone coming. It was the guard. I blew the candle out, crouched down behind the sugar barrel. My heart thundered in my chest. The guard stopped outside our wagon. He called, "Anyone there?" Climbed up on the frame. I held my breath. He slipped inside, feeling around in the darkness. I thought he would discover me any second. But as he walked through the wagon, he put his hand on the envelope with the fake rattlesnake fangs. I didn't even know it was there. The paperclip fangs went off with a loud tss. Scared him and me both. He backed out fast and jumped to the ground. When he hit the ground, one of the soldiers called, "Find something?" The guard said, "There's a rattlesnake in this last wagon." The soldier called, "Shoot him in the morning when you see him." I put my hand over my mouth and laughed till I almost fell over. You gotta love Miss Melman. Love, Teddy. May 24th, 1892. Dear Martha, I stayed inside the wagon when the guard left. I had to wait until things calmed down. I found as much food as I could in the dark and stuffed myself, brushed my hair with Mama's hairbrush, and braided my hair into braids again. I rested on the pallet, filled my pockets with lemon drops. I found Mama's neck pouch, where she kept her money when she used to sell eggs back at Salter's Grove. When I thought it was safe, I lit the candle again. I had to see in order to write to Mama and Pop. I wrote quickly. Dear Mama and Pap, I know you are alive even though they are saying you are dead. I took the land deed because they might sell this wagon before you get here, and no one knows about our secret compartment but us. Took some of the money. I left the rest for you because you'll need it to travel. Miss Melman has Gurley and Gabriel. Captain Walsh has Jeb and January. If I don't find you in the next few days, I'll go to our kinfolk, Daniel Bodain. Love, Teddy. P.S. Mama, I saw a red cardinal. After I wrote the letter and folded it carefully, I put it in an envelope and left it for them just like Miss Melman had left one for me. I pictured Mama and Pap finding the letter and then coming to find me. I pictured all of us laughing and hugging and feeling safe again. I climbed quietly down and found the secret compartment under the wagon, eased it open and felt inside for the folded land deed. I felt the cool metal of Grandfather's watch. I slipped the deed, the watch, and $20 into the neck pouch and just closed the secret compartment. Just then I heard a soft whimper. It was coming from right there beneath the wagon. I listened again. It was coming from inside the hammock. I reached my hand in and felt something furry. Ethelbert. I was so surprised I almost called out his name. My sweet Ethel was guarding our wagon, waiting for me to come home. He found me for the second time. His whimpers turned from pitiful to joyful. Before I could stop him, he barked, a loud, happy bark. One of the guards called, "What's that?" Another soldier said, "It's probably that dog has been hanging around begging. When you shoot that rattlesnake, please put that dog out of his misery too." We had to get away. We were both in danger. I hung the neck pouch around my neck, took up my bundle, and slipped away into the woods. Ethel followed. When we had walked far, far away, I sat down and wrapped my arms around his neck. I said, "Ethelbert, good dog. You loyal, brave dog." He whined and whined, trying to tell me what a rough time he'd had of it. I shared my jerky with him. He gobbled it greedily. I said, "You're hungry." I thought of how confusing and terrifying the past weeks must have been for him. I wonder if anyone's fed him. I wonder if he thought he had been abandoned. I wonder if anyone had been cruel to him or mean. Buried my face in the fur of his neck. "I won't leave you again," I said. "Ethelbert will help me find Mama and Pap. I know it. Love, Teddy." May 27th, 1892. Dear Martha, for the past 3 days I've looked for Mama and Pap everywhere. I walked until I had blisters on my feet. I've been to all 3 quarantine stations. No one remembers Grace or Dalton Bodain. Folks are so busy taking care of the sick or burying the dead, no one pays attention to paperwork. I went to the hospital in town. They said they didn't allow patients from any of the wagon trains. Checked with the sheriff, the preacher, the undertaker. Checked the telegraph office, the school. Most time when I ask for help, people end up sending me somewhere else. This afternoon, Ethel and I bought our dinner. I'm trying to make my money last. I bought an orange for 2 cents, roasted turkey leg for a dime, big baked potato for a nickel. Oh, I splurged and bought a giant dill pickle for a nickel too, and some milk. I forgot that. I bought a little bottle of milk for a nickel. Anyway, I had seen a grassy field out behind the feed store, and we went there to eat our supper. There's a spring nearby, and Ethel likes to drink from it. When I saw it earlier, the field was empty, except for a few geese. This afternoon, there was a giant piece of colored cloth spread out across the field. A woman was fussing with the cloth, tugging and pulling it. She had gray curly hair and wore trousers like a man and a vest. She was spreading the cloth this way and that, talking to herself. Ethel and I watched her while we ate. She was a curious sight. After we ate, I shared everything with Ethel except the orange and the pickle. I asked the woman what she was doing with the bright colored cloth. She said, "Have you heard of a hot air balloon before?" I said, "Well, I saw one in a picture book once, but it was blown up." She made a face and said, "Well, this one would be blown up, except it has a huge rip in it, and it's going to take me 7 forevers to sew it up by myself. That means I'm off schedule and I can't leave in the morning. There's an epidemic here, and I'd like to do more traveling before I catch my death of the fever." I said, "Which way are you heading?" She said, "Here and there." I said, "Anywhere near Mechanipe?" "That depends on which way the wind's blowing." I had an idea. I said, "I'll help you sew up your rip if you let me and my dog go with you." She looked at Ethel and frowned. She shook her head. "I don't take dogs." I said, "Too bad. I'm handy with a needle." She looked me over. She said, "Where are your parents?" I said, "I don't know. They had the fever, and I've been looking for them ever since. I've looked just about everywhere. We have some kinfolk near Mechanipe, so I guess I'll go there." She said, "Does your dog stink?" I said, "That depends on which way the wind's blowing." That made her laugh. We sewed up the rip all afternoon. We used special needles and stitched each seam a certain way. I tried to sew carefully because Dr. Winklepleck, that's her name, said our lives depended on it. She also said Ethel and I could sleep in the back of the feed store. My brother Carl owns the feed store. There's some hay in the back and some blankets that might be comfy. Get some sleep. I'll be back to fill the envelope at 6 o'clock in the morning. We'll take off. Great buckets of butter beans. What have I got myself into? Love, Teddy. May 28th, 1892. Dear Martha, today was a day I will never forget. I woke up to the strange whooshing sound. Dr. Winklepeck and some of her friends were out in the field, filling the balloon with hot air. They had tied a large rectangular basket underneath it. The basket was on its side, but as the balloon filled with hot air, it stood up. The basket was tethered to the ground, so it couldn't float away. Ethel and I watched, amazed. Just as the sun was coming up, Dr. Winklepleck called, "Teddy, time to go." Her friends helped me into the basket, which she called a gondola, and lifted Ethel over the side. Someone slipped a collar around Ethel's neck and tied it to the basket. Dr. Winklepleck got in with a camera and a picnic basket. She called for someone to release the tethers. We floated up. At first I was so scared my legs felt like wet noodles. I sunk down to the bottom of the gondola. Ethel whimpered. Dr. Winklepleck said, "You'll get your legs in a minute, Teddy. We're going to ascend slowly, so you can look around. Just think of it. You're getting to see sights most people can only dream of." I pulled myself up and peeked over the side of the gondola. What I saw took my breath away. The roofs of houses were below us. I could almost touch the spire of the church. The tops of the trees were practically close enough to reach as we floated over them. Town was stirring below, and people shouted when they saw us. They say, "Look, it's a balloon. Come, quick, hurry." We were close enough to see their faces. I searched everywhere for Mama and Pap. I called, "I'm looking for Dalton and Grace Bodain. If you see them, tell them their daughter has gone to their kinfolk in Mechanipe." The balloon rose higher as Dr. Winklepleck operated the burner. The people grew smaller and smaller. Soon, I could see all around. I saw orange groves, tomato fields. I saw the quarantine stations. I saw the stockade where our wagon was. I saw our wagon there in the last row. We rose higher and began to slowly blow across the sky. Couldn't imagine how high we were. My feet have never been off the ground like that before. I wish with all my heart that you could have been with me, Martha. The balloon carried us a long way. I studied the sky. I said, I believe we are traveling southeast. Dr. Winkleplex said, you're good with directions. She explained that she is a cartographer, which means she's a map maker. Can you imagine a woman doing something so curious? She's also a photographer. While we were in the air, she took some photographs with her camera. She said, I've been all over the world, but nothing gives me more satisfaction than ballooning right here in America. From up here, you can see the intense beauty of the landscape. We have a chance to see nature at its finest. I told her the story of leaving Mississippi, traveling with a wagon train, Dylan dying of the fever, and getting separated from Mama and Pap. She really listened, which is unusual. Lately, most adults have brushed me off or sent me somewhere else. This afternoon, Dr. Winkleplex said, we'd better descend. We're near Gainesville. I see a nice pasture to land in. As we floated lower, folks came out of their houses and barns and pointed up at us. When we landed, a farmer and his wife agreed to let us stay in their house for the night. The farmer's wife, Mrs. Green, is making fried chicken for supper tonight. Jumpin' jubilation. Love, Teddy.